Welcome to the Curiosity Crisis. We challenge ourselves to explore the world of business, tech, investing, and science. Get curious and be part of our journey as we discuss, challenge, and learn. Our guest today is Jim Penman, the founder and driving force behind one of Australia's most successful services-based businesses. Starting from humble beginnings, Jim built a company that now spans multiple industries. What makes his story remarkable isn't his own success, but the ripple effect. Through the Jim's Group franchise model, he's helped thousands of Australians build wealth and independence. His journey from a single service provider to a national group of small businesses is one of Australia's most exemplary entrepreneurial stories. But what's more amazing than all of this is Jim's values and curiosity about the world around him. As we've said, our favourite opening question and something that aligns with the podcast deeply is, what's keeping you curious at the moment? So is there anything in particular?
Well, I'm an obsessive reader. I subscribe to several different magazines, including The Economist, Atlantic, New Scientist, The Australian. Plus, I read or listen to probably a couple of books a week on a wide variety of subjects. At the moment, I'm listening to a talking book about the British Empire, which is really interesting because you can see some parallels between how the British conquered India and what the Romans did in the Eastern Mediterranean. Very, very interesting. And I'm also rereading a biography of Bob Hawke.
Oh, really?
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
My interests are extremely wild. I often just pick up something, I look at it, I see a magazine, I read a book, I listen to a book, and I get interested. And then it's amazing, quite often the stuff that seems so random really comes out to be useful or interesting in some other way.
For our listeners, Jim has two massive bookshelves behind him right now that are absolutely filled with books. So it doesn't really surprise me that was the thing that's keeping you curious, Jim.
Yeah, books are great. And talking books is one of the greatest things too, because that means all the time that I spend exercising, farming, driving, it's full of wonderful information. I mean, I've seen stuff in the past 12 months that have completely turned my world around. Some of that stuff about dopamine receptors and stuff, which I wouldn't even know in 12 months ago. Had to totally go through and rewrite a couple of my books because there's new ideas.
Wow, I didn't know that. There you go.
That's so cool. We often talk about, when we're talking about what's keeping ourselves curious, is all about books, but it's so refreshing to hear that someone as busy as you consumes tons of long-form content, which we absolutely love. That's so cool.
Just a quick follow-up question. Are you into audiobooks or are you...
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I love audiobooks. I used to hate driving because it was boring and you can only listen to something on the radio and like the news or something, which is very, very superficial. Now I can listen to anything.
Timeless content.
That's good to know.
I'm running, you see, keeping fit. I run a half hour a day on the treadmill. I do weightlifting and stuff. Have a shower, get dry. All that time I'm listening to talking books the whole time.
Wow.
Just every day, extra information going and keeping active in mind and body.
Well, you are actually the perfect guest for the Curiosity Crisis podcast. This is perfect. Yeah. You are incredibly curious. So we'll talk about, we'll jump into it now. So obviously there's been lots written about like your own story. You've written a book and you've got another book coming out, but we would love to hear, I guess, just some of the, if you don't have time to tell the whole story, like what are some of the most pivotal moments and big challenges from growing your single mowing business into a multi-division international franchise? Like what stands out to you in terms of your story? Are the key points that took you from 0 to 1 and then 1 to, I don't know where you are now, millions? Yeah.
I think the striking thing about it is that it wasn't any one big step. It was thousands of little steps. People have this idea that, somebody's going along mowing lawns, yeah, just happy to mow lawns. Then I think, what if I franchise? Bang, you're a multi-millionaire. It's nothing like that. It's thousands of little decisions. It's when you're mowing a lawn, how you cut the grass more efficiently, more quickly, how you do a better job, how you save yourself, 5 seconds emptying a grass bag or going around a couple of seconds going around a tree or navigating between streets. And then when you start employing people, what kind of people? How do you find them? How do you look after them? And then how do you make money? And I started selling lawn mowing rounds. And how do you do that when you don't know how to sell? And it just gradually moves. And at every stage, it's sort of surprising. I mean, One thing I would say about business, nothing ever works out the way you expect. Most things work out far worse than you expect, and some things work out far better than you expect. The only thing you can predict is it will never be what you think is going to happen.
Wow. So, okay, I'll pitch it another way, but that's awesome. So what I took away from that is you iterate a lot. You've just gone from one to the other to the other to the other to keep making little changes. But did you ever have the vision of like, did you know when you maybe had the first idea of creating a franchise that you were going to end up where you are now? Like, was there any
No.
vision of that?
I had no idea. Look, in the 80s, I had this business that was building up and selling lawn mowing rounds. It was a little business. I had about a dozen subbies and stuff, and I built and saw, which was okay. Got myself out of debt, bought a house, was doing all right. Then this company called VIP appears. They're from Adelaide. They're interstate. They had 250 franchisees. They terrified me. I thought these guys would absolutely crush me. I even tried to join them. I said to them, "Listen, I will help to build VIP, and because you guys are too capable for me. Got too much money, too much experience. I can't compete with you." They said, "No, thanks." So I raided their show. I went into the expo, picked up a brochure, got the guy behind the desk to tell me some questions, and then the state manager came and kicked me off because he said, "That's Jim Penman, don't tell him anything else." So I went away. So I thought, okay, all right, I can see some benefits to this system, but maybe I could produce something that would be even better for the franchisee. That was my idea. And so 9 months of arguing with lawyers, which was very frustrating, I launched the franchise in mid-1989. And somebody asked me at that time, how many franchisees do you think you might have one day? And I said, look, I don't know this will work, but one day, if it really works out well, I'm not saying it will, I might have as many as 100. That's what I said, because I was against this huge competitor that seemed to be so intimidating. I just didn't see how I could possibly beat them. As it is, we're now, I don't know, 10, 20 times the size. I've got no idea, but
Yeah.
I didn't expect it. And for a long time, I was just surprised. I just kept on doing things. See, I did things that I thought would hold me back. Like in the beginning, I was determined to be selective. I wasn't going to put on anybody that I thought might fail. And I thought, well, I'm never going to grow that much because I'm never going to take as many people as that. And I'll never get as much money and I'll never have... So that was kind of like a decision that's made for, I suppose, ethical reasons. But it just weirdly turned out that was a good strategy because when somebody came to see me about a franchise, I had a secret weapon. Because they'd say, basically, why should we buy from you? You're running it from your basement. You're nowhere. You're no one. Interstate, they're much more successful. They've got a fancy office and stuff. Why would I buy it from you? I said, okay, here's a list of my franchisees with their phone numbers. What I want you to do is to go and ring them. And then go and ring their people, which I knew they wouldn't give them a list, you see, because I knew my people were happy.
Yeah.
Because I not only tried to look after them as well as I could, but I also made sure that the ones I had were suited to the business as far as I could. I would trial them on the road first. If they didn't give good customer service, I wouldn't accept them. So things like that, you just don't expect it. It's interesting though, a lot of the best decisions I make in business, in retrospect, were the ones I made for ethical reasons rather than against what I thought was my own business interest.
That's very interesting, actually. Now, like just talking about that kind of franchising process that you went through, do you think it was kind of that systems mindset that you eventually had, and then because you were talking there about kind of going in and seeing what was successful and then trying to implement that and doing what would make a franchisee happy and kind of like breeding success out of it. Do you think that kind of mentality of looking at it from a real systems approach was something that, really allowed it to compound into what it is today?
I think it's more got to do with ethics than systems. I don't even know what you mean by systems, actually.
Okay.
But, okay, let me put it this way. I'm a Christian. If you look at a story that encapsulates what Jim's is about, it's Jesus washing his disciples' feet. Okay? Now, to understand the context of that, in the Middle East at that time, that was a very degrading, dirty, filthy, unpleasant job. That was like a slave. That was a really demeaning thing. Sometimes a revered rabbi, the disciples might wash the rabbi's feet as a sign of extreme respect. Jesus washed his disciples' feet, which they found quite shocking. And that whole concept of servant leadership, in other words, when you lead, you are trying to help somebody else. It's more than systems, it's an attitude. And when I'm dealing with customer service or franchisees every day, my whole mentality is, what can I do to help? How can I help? So we've just come across a really bad situation. I'll give you an example. And this is some of the bad things that happen. We've got a new division, Jim's Healthcare, which has got real problems. You've got 9 people signed up, hasn't been well supported. The people behind it have walked away. So I am left with a situation where we've got a division, which I don't understand very well, with people needing support. Now, what do I do about that? How do you cope with it? And the thing you've got to look at is not so much what's my legal responsibility, which is probably limited, but what can I do to help these people out? So I'm doing things like trying to arrange for them to transfer to different divisions, seeing if I can get new leaderships, talking with them. It's always looking at, from their point of view, they've invested money in this thing, what can I do? How can I solve their problem? And it's challenging, and it's
I love that mentality, though, that servant mentality. And it's funny that it's worked in the services business, but it's out of a belief that you have. That's awesome. Absolutely love that. And I guess, like a follow-up to that is, you have this massive customer focus, right? And I'm just wondering how, if that's your mentality, how do you kind of let that trickle down into all your franchises then?
Well, surprisingly powerful, because when you found something, you have this visionary sort of image. It's very strange. People, when they first see me, they're kind of overawed sometimes. There's this legendary figure. I'm really a pretty ordinary person. The more you know me, the less impressed you are by me. You ask anybody in my family. But people see me for the first time, and I get up and give a talk in training, and I get the first talk. I talk for an hour and a half, which we call the ethos talk, about service, customer service to franchisees. And I'm this legendary, charismatic figure talking intensively about this, and then we make it real. For example, I do give my phone number, my email address to every one of my 5,500 franchisees, and not only allow them, but I encourage them and urge them to contact me, and they do multiple times a day. Franchisees contact me about something, so I show by example. And that kind of, when you talk at the talk and you also act the talk, it does tend to influence people. And people often ask me, am I proud of having 5,500 franchisees? And I said, really the thing I'm most proud of is the fact that these attitudes that I have, which are peculiar, are very widespread in gyms. Like, take during COVID, we had a bad time. You guys went so badly off Sydney and Canberra, but in here we couldn't work for 2 months, and that was a very bad time. Now, we of course didn't charge our franchisees any fees. You couldn't do that, so they weren't getting any money. So the franchisors' income was completely zero. But what I happen to know is the franchisors, people who are looking after franchises, are working harder during those 2 months than they ever did before or since, even though they weren't getting paid, because they cared about their guys and they wanted to help them. And you had situations like a lady who was in dog wash. She was a student. She had no government income. The government says you're not allowed to work, forbid you to work, even though she's no danger to public health. You can't work, there's no government money for you. Now, she's faced with eviction, she's faced with she can't pay for food. You know what? Other franchisees, even those without income, gathered around, supported her, gave her food vouchers. And we gave her a bit of help too. So that caring, people would ring me up and say, listen, I know I haven't got any work myself, but I'm in a good situation financially. Is there anybody who needs help? And I was so moved by that. These are wonderful, amazing people. So this attitude, and I know too that if a new franchisee goes into a meeting, there'll be senior franchisees, experienced who will mentor them and help them and guide them and befriend them. I've heard this so many times.
This is so interesting because, like, my original picture of franchising is, I guess, that the total, a lot of companies talk about culture and values and stuff like that, and I thought it was harder in a franchise business because everyone sort of goes out and are their independent selves. I wanted to ask, like, it's interesting that you do, in doing my research, I guess, it's interesting that you make it easy enough for franchisees, if they want to go out on their own to, run an independent business and not have Jim's name attached to it. But obviously lots and lots stay. Is it the culture, do you think, that is the key of that? Like, what is the key to making this business franchisable and people stay within it?
What you've got to do is to provide ongoing value. It's interesting, really. Most franchisees, after the first few months, they have enough work. They don't need, if you've got regular clients like mowing, cleaning, dog wash, those kind of divisions, they don't usually need a lot of work ongoing. Now, they may take some leads just to fill in the gaps and stuff, but in a sense, purely as a work-finding exercise, a lot of them don't need it. But then what you do is you have a system of community. You have meetings which are regular. You have a franchisor. We require franchisors to ring franchisees, at least monthly, but ideally weekly. Keep in contact. Ask how they're going. Find out if anything they can help them. And then that sense of camaraderie and that sense of pride and that sense of mission, of being part of something. And people do go independent sometimes, but the great majority don't. It's interesting. We don't make it difficult. We just say you pay us it's about $5,000 typically, and we don't always chase it. I must say, sometimes we do, but it's not a big thing. Because to my mind, if a person's only staying with you because they're of the threat of legal action, it's not really much of a...
Yeah, exactly.
Like, imagine if you ring up somebody about a franchise and you say, what do you think? Why are you in it? You say, I'm only in it because I'm forced to, because otherwise they'll sue me. It doesn't give a good impression.
No.
Not a lot of...
Out there, independent, happily working, saying, yes, I don't need gyms anymore, but it was a great experience and I get a lot from them.
Yeah.
Everybody who's there is happy. I ring my 10-year veterans. One of the things I do, 10, 20, 30-year veterans. I do it once a month. And it's wonderful because you ask them what they were doing and what they're doing now. And most of them don't take much leaves, but they love the system. They love the support. They really like their franchisor. They just like being part of it.
It's so great to hear that, you have that unity of all of these franchisees. And I guess, as Kush was saying, we did a lot of research for this episode and we were looking through kind of the training centers that you have for these people as well. And we were looking at how you have kind of this like campus style almost, where people come and they stay there and they go and learn. And it's this full thing where they eat there. And I was kind of just wondering, where did you get the idea for that? Was that something that you had in mind when you decided we're going to start franchises, or was that something that came along a bit later?
I wanted to do it fairly early. Again, it's a matter of culture. You want to try and indoctrinate people in your culture. And so I thought the best way to do that was have them actually live with us for a few days. That was kind of the idea behind it. And,
right.
And it's not just they live with each other, but I also make a point of going around and talking to as many people. I probably have some contact with everybody at least once during the training, personally, directly. Say hello to them, bump fists and this kind of thing, and just chat to them a bit. You want them to become part of us. Believe what we believe. It's like if you've read Jim Collins' Good to Great, Built to Last, those kinds of books too. They talk about the value of culture in an organisation, something that's widely shared. And we do have that. And you've got to talk about it a lot. You've got to keep on, you've got to show by examples. And
Today's episode is sponsored by OptiVenture, the ultimate all-in-one supplement system crafted exclusively for hikers and outdoor adventurers. OptiVenture's unique day and night formulas provide everything you need, from essential vitamins and minerals to probiotics and omega-3s, timed perfectly to match your body's rhythm. The day formula boosts energy, immunity, and mental clarity, keeping you strong and focused on the trail, and the night formula supports deep recovery, reduces inflammation, and promotes restful sleep so you wake up ready for the next adventure. Join the tribe and elevate your outdoor experience. Check out optiventure.co to learn more. Yeah, okay, so and for you, that's just a vehicle and a medium for doing that. Like, you're bringing everyone together. It's not like an online one where you can speak for a bit and send out an email after. You're actually like one-on-one with them and talking about, Jim's ethos and trying to convey that, because that's my next question is about, like, where do you see business going in the future? And I think after COVID, with the whole work from home thing, I've got a pretty strong view that I think there's still so much about business and being person to person, because we're just, at the end of the day, we're all humans. But that's sort of like a bit of the thesis behind the building and the culture and everything like that.
We've spent millions of years evolving to be with each other face to face. Online just does not have the same effect. If you have, the more friends you have online, the more lonely and miserable you are. The more and the better friends you have in person, the more happy and positive you are. It's just not the same. Online, we do have staff who spend maybe a day or two a week away, but they've got to come in and spend time with us as well. Otherwise, you'd lose it. It's the odd conversations, the chit-chat, the jokes, the sharing, the conversations that drift from topic to topic. Just things come up in person.
Yeah,
I don't believe online is a substitute.
So I wanted to ask then, just changing tune a little bit, I want to ask, what's your philosophy on business in the age we're in right now? So you've got many traditional on-the-ground businesses, so, lawn mowing, you talked about them, lawn mowing, dog wash, car wash, like all of these sorts of businesses. So in an age of in the age of AI and technology, sort of, I think it might be the Jeff Bezos question, like what will not change, and where do you see the space that you operate in, in the next 5, 10, 15 years?
We invest very heavily in technology. We spend several $1 million a year developing software systems, and that's crucial to, for example, the way we've dropped the level of complaints, about 99% since pre-franchise days, so more. And that's a lot of that's to do with technology and feedback systems and customer surveys and all kinds of things like that help to drive it forward. So we make good use of it and make good use of things like AI too and social media and the rest. But the fundamental job is going out there doing work, the mowing, the cleaning, the dog wash, the other things, which is a very personal area. So we just help people to be more effective, to travel less, to make better hourly rates, to have a better lifestyle, to have better work-life balance, those kinds of things.
Well, I guess on the flip side of that, is there anything that you see will change in the next 10 years? Is there anything that you're looking at changing in the way that you guys operate, or is there any kind of, I guess if you had to guess?
Just, see, if you asked me even a year ago, I'd tell you that nothing's much going to change, but then everything changes. We will see dramatic changes. We've got a new software system that's just being released, Jimbo, that we intend to repeal outside of gyms as well. And it does a whole stack of different things that we couldn't do in the past. Like, for example, it's engineered to reduce the level of complaints. It does things like if you don't call the client back within 2 hours, it reminds you. In my voice, actually, I yell at them, answer the phone. We do other things too, so that when you can't get through, you press a button, it sends a message to the client. There's a whole stack of things about this that's designed, engineered to make your life easier. Down the track of it, one of the things we're really looking forward to, hopefully by the end of the year, is when a customer rings in, we actually look into a franchisee's diary and then we can book them an appointment because we know where they are. That kind of thing will dramatically improve customer service and productivity and the income of our franchisees. So there's huge changes taking place. Now, that's all going to happen in the next 6 months. I could not comprehend where we'll be in 10 years' time, except that we'll continue to drive for better service. Helping franchisee to do better income, working out how long it takes you to do a job. How can you improve it? How can you get your efficiency up? How can we look at your conversion rate? Why are you converting jobs better than someone else? There's so much that technology can do. It's unimaginable. Even the things I can think of that we'll do in the next 6 months is probably dwarfed in the next 6 years.
But then I guess the core thesis is like all of the services that your franchises and your franchisees offer, the demand for those are not going away at all. They're just integral parts of society as is, I guess.
No, you're completely right. And that's one very big thing about our area. People are very scared of AI, and they jolly well should be. It was the biggest job destroyer you could imagine. So many of these prestigious white-collar jobs, like computer programming, for example, that used to be the career of the 21st century. Well, I'll tell you what, there's less of them around than there used to be because AI is so good at these things. Less people going through courses. And you look at banking and you look at all kinds of different areas of technology and bookkeeping and accounting, and all these areas are going to be revolutionized. There's going to be mass layoffs of people in these brain jobs. Well, where do they go? But you'll always need plumbers and electricians and gardeners. There's no feasible way that any of these things can be properly automated. Made more efficient, yes, absolutely. Made more profitable, yes. But automated away, no way. Unless you get a complete 100% humanoid robot. It's not going to happen.
Yeah. That's crazy. And just on the technology, I kind of love that because, I mean, it's just it's a space that you've probably got the best data and insight on, in the world or in Australia because you've been running these businesses and these franchises for years and years. So you understand the customer and your franchisees and like the services probably better than anyone else. So are all of that technology developed in-house?
The technology is in-house, yes.
Yeah.
The service is not. The services come because somebody has an idea. Like just today as an example, somebody contacted me, they got to me by email this morning about Jim's delivery. I just as an example happened today. Now this is a guy who's actually run a substantial business that delivers things, and puts things in. Now that's a particularly brilliant idea. We don't do that. So you like a washing machine, for example, you pick it up from the retailer, you deliver it, you plug it in, you put it in. That's a huge area. We don't do that. This is potentially another division. I don't know if it's going to happen or not.
Yeah.
I told the guy how it worked. He's going to come and talk to me, and we're going to take it from there. But who knows? The ideas come from the industries, come from outside, but the technology to make the work we develop internally.
So just on that, like, do those ideas come and then each one like goes through its own ideation process and like do you come up with it for each division, like its own business model sort of thing?
Well, they're very similar. The way all these businesses operate is extremely similar. Basically, A customer rings up for a service, somebody contacts them, arranges the service, gives a quote, goes and does it. That's kind of how it operates. So this particular one will probably go through the retailer to a large extent. So, but yeah, the actual technicalities of how you do the job comes from somebody with experience in that area normally.
Yep.
But the technology of how you provide service to clients and how you look after franchisees, that's something that's very much in common. See, we don't do in things like childcare centres or anything that's fixed. We only do service businesses.
Yep.
We're specialists in that area.
Yeah, I love that. That's just such an awesome, really interesting model. And it's so different to what Luke and I do, but it's fascinating.
It's amazing, though, how many types of service businesses there are and how many that Jim's group now operates. Because
we operate about 50, but there could be 500. I mean, where's the upper limit? The limit actually is not so much ideas, it's people. It's people to drive them. Like late last year, one of our mowing franchisees in South Australia came up with he wanted to do driving school. Now, he doesn't have a background in the industry, but he's a very good franchisee. He's been successful, he makes good money, he's a trainer, he gets involved in support, and he's got great customer service. So we've helped him and showed him how to do it. He's come in, done all the training courses. He's now taking off, and it's doing very well.
That's cool.
There's so many good stories that you have from franchisees that have worked for you. I swear every question we throw at you, you have an example of someone who's done something very specific to that.
Yeah, we love the stories about people. It's coming like Dan Cale. He's one of our. This is a guy who's a high school dropout. Okay, this is a guy who would consider in social science terms is a failure. He hasn't completed high school, worked at McDonald's, which is actually pretty good training, disgusting food, but great training. Some years ago, he bought a lawn mowing franchise. And with great trepidation, he became very successful. At his peak, he was turning over close to $1 million a year. Then he got out of that and he became one of our top franchisors, and they take over the whole mowing division. This is a guy in his early 30s.
Wow.
He's already a multi-millionaire. Just from a guy who pushes a lawnmower around. No high school education, not much capital, nothing, but he's a great guy.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's such a good story, though. I love that. I love that for him. That's really good. Yeah, that's awesome.
You know what's even more wonderful? He's actually, because of the success, he's able to have 2 more children. And they're both boys.
Really?
And their middle names are David and James, which is my legal second name.
I did come across that in your research. Yeah.
That's amazing.
I didn't know that until we were researching this episode. So I assume Jim's your middle name then?
Yeah, David James is my legal name.
James.
I use my middle name.
So just changing here a little bit, you've done a PhD in epigenetics, right? Now, Kush and I don't know.
The PhD was in history, as a matter of
Oh, it was in history. Kush and I don't know a lot about this, but we were wondering if you could explain biohistory and epigenetics to us as if we were 7 years old, and why it matters.
I went to university to try and uncover the reason for the rise and fall of civilization. If you could imagine a more impractical topic, which I've been interested in since I was like 15. I was always interested in ancient civilizations, why they collapsed, why they rise, this kind of thing. Went to university, started with sociology, soon decided that was complete garbage, switched to history and started to see patterns of behaviour. And then I tried to explain and understand what was going on. And all the explanations people give about social movements and great men and stuff made no sense. What I came to the conclusion was that there was a biological basis. So I started off with history, I went to cross-cultural anthropology, to economics, to biology, looking at animals and the way they cooperate. And I came to the conclusion a lot of it had to do with the way that animals relate to food shortage and abundance. Okay? And no, I didn't understand the mechanism at that time. I knew there was something going on in physiology. At that time I was dead. I failed my PhD first time through. I got it eventually, but I had to rewrite some stuff. But I failed that. But I had no way of continuing. And I knew that the research I needed to do was in the area of neuroscience. It wasn't history at all. Now, I'm not a neuroscientist. I had no money. I was deeply in debt. So at that stage, for the first time in my life, I decided, okay, there's only one solution. If I want to pursue this, I have got to become rich. Then I can afford to fund the research myself. So in the last 10 years, I've been doing that, gradually putting more and more money into this. And what I didn't understand back in the 70s and early 80s is that the key to all of these things is actually epigenetics.
Okay.
And what that means is this. If you understand what genes are, what DNA is, basically what it does is spits out protein. So a gene spits out a protein. The protein does things. But what environment does, and this is from your experience, from your early life, and even from your parents, is it switches certain genes on or off. And these are epigenetic changes. They're not genetic, they're epigenetic. And the key to understanding it is to understanding how things like food restriction and certain methods of upbringing and other things like that, how they affect the way that genes function. So what we're doing is we're using mild food restriction as a model with rats. And this is the sort of thing that makes them healthier. They actually live longer and healthier lives than normal rats. And try and look at changes to their genes, to their epigenes. And then we measure them. And what we're actually doing is developing treatments, originally using human neuron cells. You put thousands of drugs into little cells and you see how they affect the neurons. And then you look for the kind of epigenetic changes that we're after. And then when you've got that, we tested about 1,000 drugs recently. We found about 61 candidates. We're now starting to test about 9 of them.
Wow.
We think will have this effect. And we're also looking at a system called CRISPR you may have heard of, which is where you go in directly and you make the direct changes in the... Well, mostly it's used for genetic purposes, changing the genome, but we're using it for epigenetic purposes. And we're about to hire one of the top epigenetic CRISPR people in the country to help us to set this program up and make it run. So we're pretty confident within a year or two we'll have some fairly good findings.
First off, what a comprehensive answer to that question.
It probably wasn't you wanted.
That research that you did on rats, it sounds very similar to David Sinclair, another Australian. His research at Harvard on, I guess, what determines our lifespan, which I thought was a very interesting parallel.
Yes, it is too. Well, mild food restriction actually is very good for longevity and health. I practice 16-8 fasting, so I don't eat for 16 hours a day. I eat an 8-hour window and getting exercise and stuff like that. That's all to do with maintaining vigour into old age and keeping your mind active and your body active.
Anecdotally, how have you found that out of interest?
Well, it works very well. I get hungry at times.
Okay.
Right now, I'm looking forward to dinner, I can tell you, which is going to be mainly vegetables. So my wife's a beautiful cook, but sometimes you wouldn't mind a bit more chocolate and stuff, but you just have to try and resist that sort of thing.
Just jumping in for a quick break. We'd love it if you did us a favour and gave us a 5-star review on your podcast player. We'd really appreciate it. It helps grow the podcast and get to more ears. Thank you.
So with epigenetics, again, very low base of knowledge here, but so do those changes happen during one's lifespan, or is that are these changes that occur over one's lifespan and then in their offspring sort of thing, you'll witness these changes, or is it happening? Okay, yeah.
Epigenetic effects right now. If you get hungry, that is causing an epigenetic change. Not a very strong one, but it's there. It actually changes your character. The degree of things like if you're, for example, sexual activity has the same effect, or drugs, or alcohol, or tobacco. They all have epigenetic changes. Mostly fairly negative, I might say, in terms of health and well-being. Yeah, some of it relates to what you do right now. A lot of it relates to what happened in your early life, and the earlier the more, and it also relates to what happened to your parents. So, for example, if we did some experiments where we subjected some male rats to mild food restriction, and then mated them, and then the rats had nothing to do with the young. They never saw them. But the offspring, actually had many of the characteristics of food restriction. They're more exploratory, for example.
That's very interesting. I didn't know that existed.
Yes. A lot of the stuff I was looking at in my PhD, I couldn't understand. And as soon as I understood, because we didn't know about epigenetics in those days, as soon as I read about it, I thought, that's what's going on. That's why it's carries from generation to generation. And there's sort of a cascading effect. One of the things we're doing with mice, with one particular experiment, is we're actually doing this over several generations and seeing if there's a cascading change, if there's more of a change in the next generation, or whether it reverses itself, this kind of thing.
So just on this, this all started purely from your curiosity from when you were a teenager at high school, and then you sort of going into university, and then it just kept evolving from there. You started studying sociology, then history, and then you got into more of these, and it's backed by this idea that civilizations have changed because of impacts in our lives that have changed something within us. That is a really, really awesome I guess chase of a passion and interest. I just love that story. Yeah,
it's all about character. Of course, it's all about character. People think that it's to do with grand impersonal forces like economics, politics. It's not. It's about individual character. Societies reflect the individual. And what's happening to our society right now, why there's so many things going wrong, why you've got plunging birth rates and deaths of despair and rising rates of mental illness and all kinds of really bad issues, you can only understand it in those terms of this biology. And that's the only way you can reverse it too. I'm about to come out with a book called The Birth Rate Crisis, which is actually talking about this thing happening all, and people are starting to panic, especially in Eastern Europe and East Asia, where birth rates are so far below replacement level. And there's a reason for this, and they think it's to do with money, and it's not. It's to do with character. There's a change in character. People are less interested in children than they used to be.
So I guess, I mean, even from that, it sounds like, yeah, your perspective on some things, for example, yeah, what's happening to us as a society has your opinion on that seems to have been influenced. And I was wondering whether this same kind of biological understanding now has that affected the way that you kind of make decisions or deal with your business as well? Like, has it bled into other areas? Yeah.
I don't know about my business. It certainly affected my personal life. Look, I started from a very, what do you call it, left-wing, liberal, let it all hang up, do what feels good type of thing. When I was at school, I got into quite a lot of trouble because I would post things on notice boards advocating stuff that, wouldn't be unusual today, but going to a conservative Christian school in the 60s was considered to be beyond the pale. Got into a lot of trouble. But then as I started to understand the reason for traditional type of values, I became much more aware of the value of traditional morality and traditional faith. And I actually became, partly as well, I became a Christian when I was 28. And I kind of become very aware of the value of traditional values, including things like chastity, including things like humility and modesty and group awareness and community and those kinds of things too. So in a sense, my research has affected the way I think about life and what I've done with my life. But as far as how's it affected my business, I wouldn't put exact comparison. Look, the only thing that they got in common is that as a thinker about society, I was and I am wildly unorthodox. When everybody had shown me there's 3 different reasons for something happening, I'll tell you a totally different reason. And I'll disagree with everybody. I was considered to be totally arrogant and beyond there because I just didn't accept people's explanations as being correct. And I said why they weren't. I used to go and tell my lecturers off if they gave me a mark down on my paper, why they were wrong.
Well, that's phenomenal to have like a mind to challenge. Like one of my bosses says, I like arguments and I like people that argue, obviously in a respectful way. But if you've got differing opinions, like that's where the best collaborative discussion and arguments, ideas come from because you.
But the same kind of habit applies in business too. Is that I'm totally unorthodox. I do things in a way that nobody else has ever done. Like we're the only franchising system in the world where you can move to a different franchisor or even different division, and your own franchisor has no say. You can vote out your own franchisor. You can veto changes to your own manual. There's a clause in the contract that actually says that the majority share of Jim's Group cannot be sold without the written consent of majority of franchisees. There's a whole lot of stuff in there which is really wildly unorthodox. And that's the same thinking.
I guess, well, following on from that, we've talked about kind of your perspective on society, and we've talked about your belief system and, just kind of like as well, we opened with that servant mentality of your franchisees, and that's something that you've pushed for and led to success, obviously, as well. And I was wondering if there's kind of an impact that you do hope that your work will have on society.
Well, if I'm correct and if I can get people to listen, it will change the world. It's completely revolutionised everything. Like, okay, let's look at one particular thing. Why are some countries so poor and other countries so wealthy? Why is, say, Congo or somewhere like that poor and the United States or Australia, relatively speaking, are wealthy? Now, people would say, oh, well, it's the institutions and it's the education system. And I'd say, no, it's the character. Okay. And basically, it's an epigenetic change. So, implicitly in this, if you could develop the right treatment, you could go to somewhere like the Congo or anywhere else, and you could provide an epigenetic adjustment if people wanted it, if they wanted it, but purely voluntary. And within a generation, they become prosperous, democratic, wealthy. That's the implications of this, because everything is epigenetic. Everything is to do with character. And we believe we know how to start changing character. This will change the world.
That is a very, very, very bold statement and
Yes.
like thesis. But I think I love that you're putting sort of your life's work at the moment into that. Obviously outside of Jim's group, but that is incredibly bold. I love it. I absolutely love it.
But very wild. And nobody agrees with me at the moment. At least only a few people actually see the point. But it's... I mean, we do experiments all the time to test this stuff. We're actually trying things. See, the great thing about science is this, and this is why it's so different from other ways of thinking. You have a hypothesis, you test it.
Yes.
If the testing supports the hypothesis, it strengthens it. If it defeats it, then it makes it weak. Now, I apply the same sort of thing. We look at studies of societies and we say this is the reason why this happens. So you look at the reason for the First World War, for example, why it happened. Now you'll find all kinds of reasons why the First World War happened. I'll tell you why I think it's happened. It's happened because it's the same thing as causing lemmings to migrate at the peak of the lemming cycle. They actually become very aggressive, bold, and they move out in mass migration. That's what happened, and you can actually spot it by changes to the birth rate. When the birth rate peaks, population peaks and starts to fall, that's when you get these big aggressive movements, and you can spot it with different countries too. So
Wow.
it's a wildly unorthodox thinking, but you can test it, and there are implications because you can actually do things with rats and mice to actually test whether what I'm saying is correct. You try and develop these things and you look at the epigenetic changes in the animals.
That's incredible.
You have me a bit worried about our birth rates now, Jim.
You should be worried.
Yeah.
Birth rates have gone down really dramatically, but let me tell you something, they are going to continue to fall. We haven't reached 1.6 or whatever we are in Australia is not permanent. It's going to drop and it's going to drop and it's going to drop. And you can see this very clearly if you look at the attitudes of people. Now, young people today, compared with those, say, 30 years ago, are much less interested in marriage and family than they used to be. And that is the indication. So if you go back to the 50s, very strong interest. Less and less and less and less. So young people now, teenagers, early 20s, are much less interested in their parents. So the birth rate's going to continue to fall. It's not money, it's attitudes, it's the priorities, what's important to you. Wow. And that determines how many children you have. Not how much money you have. Because in fact, people will say, I've had more money, I'd have more kids. Well, no, you wouldn't. Because in fact, the wealthier we get, the less children we have.
That's really interesting. So, okay, where would we start? So you've absolutely piqued my interest. Where would I start to delve into this a bit more at sort of a reading pace? So like, what would you recommend reading to get into it? And yeah.
The difficulty with this is, Kush, you can't really read very much that's on this line because people don't think. They go by the whole thing. It's all about money. That's why governments try to prop it up with baby bonuses and subsidised childcare and all this other useless stuff which doesn't work. But they don't know what else to do. So how you find out about it, I don't know. If you actually want to, you go to jimpenman.com.au, which is my website, put yourself in for my newsletter. And you can get it regularly delivered. It comes out every month and it talks about the different changes that you make. Also, you can go to www.biohistory.org and there's some videos on that explain some of this stuff.
Yeah, okay, wow. Well, you've absolutely piqued my interest. This is really interesting. Maybe we'll do another episode at some point just specifically on that, or we'll pick one of your themes and we'll have to pick your brain about it again because this is too good. On the topic of books, though, I did have to ask, and sorry, we're also nearly at time, so we've got two final questions. Your newest book, No Other Success, is coming out soon. What's that going to be all about? And what was the process of writing it?
Well, it's actually my business story, and it's a version of what I've updated steadily over the years. We don't normally publish it, though. We just give it internally to new franchisees as a way of establishing the culture. But in this one, we actually went into more depth, and we particularly looked at a lot of franchisee stories. It starts off with an anecdote about a guy who was a supermarket manager and used to work very long hours. And one morning when he was about to leave, he saw his kids very little during the day. He was about to leave for work early one morning, and his little 4-year-old son said, "Daddy, I wish you could have breakfast with us." Just that one statement. He said he drove to work, tears streaming down his face, quit his job, bought a lawn mowing business. And ever since then, he's seen his kids grow up. I said, "Do you ever thank him for that comment?" He said, "Every day." Now, he's not making, as far as I know, any more money than he was as a manager, probably about the same. But the difference to him And what he's done is something that you cannot replace. No matter how much money you have, you can't replace that, spending time with your kids. And the book is a reference to the saying, there's no other success can compensate for failure in the home.
Okay. Yeah. Wow. That's powerful.
That is very powerful. Now, Jim, as Kush said, we are almost at time, and thank you so much for coming on the podcast. And we've asked this for a few guests, and it's kind of around this idea that we're always growing and we're always changing as individuals. And so our question to you is, what do you want to be when you grow up?
I want to be a better person than I am. My whole life is a struggle against weakness, isn't it? What matters is to what extent you do the things that you ought to do compared with what you immediately feel like doing in the short term. And it's a struggle. It really is. I want to be a better person. We're all imperfect. We all fall short. I want to try and do better.
That's my favourite answer.
That is phenomenal. Wow. Jim, thank you so much for coming on. That was one of the most fascinating chats I think we've ever had on the podcast. I can't even begin to start. Well, I'm going to have a crack at summing up some of the stuff we've talked about, but I'm not going to do it justice at all because I'm going to be listening back to this. But I think a couple of things I've taken away is one, that you're just an incredibly active and an eager and passionate mind, like looking at how active a role you take in running Jim's group and being super connected to all the franchisees, the principles of values and the culture that you've built there is incredible, and just how much of a curious mind. I think you're probably I don't know if we can give an award on the show, but the most curious mind we've had on the Curiosity Crisis podcast.
Well, a strange mind, maybe.
Well, we love that. Strange. I mean, it'd be a boring world if we're all the same. So we absolutely loved also the story of your research and how you followed that passion and what you aim to do with it. They're really, really wild and bold theses, but I look forward to following how they play out. So at some point we might have to try and get you back on to pick your brain more deeply about that. But thank you so much for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure, and we love your story. So thanks for sharing it.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Luke.
Thanks, Jim.
Thanks for listening. Find us at curiositycrisis.com and Curiosity Crisis on Instagram. We're on all major streaming services, so you can listen how you like. We have to ask a favour. If you got anything out of this episode and are getting value from the podcast, please leave us a 5-star review on your podcast player. That helps us be found by more listeners, and it helps grow the podcast. So thank you, and catch you on the next episode.